Hey everybody, good evening. It is 7-ish, 7:32 here Monday. Thank you wherever you may be watching, listening to The Yard Sign, the most important relevant podcast in politics. We got a little bit of a video issue. There we go. Happening, but glad you're watching. Thank you so much for tuning in. We've got an exciting show for you, an exciting guest, someone we haven't seen in a while, but we're happy to have him back. So we're going to have some really interesting dialogue tonight about what's happening here in the state of Florida. That's right. We're being pretty Florida-centric today, and therefore the appropriate baseball cap. Let's run through the topics, and although they may not seem like much, there's definitely a lot to cover. We'll get into the 2022 legislative recap, hence another hint to our special guest. We'll talk about the gender lessons for kids. New Jersey seemingly wanting to kind of return the ball, if you will, back to DeSantis' side of the court as he kind of gets justified in some of the legislation that's been controversial coming out of Tallahassee. And Hunter Biden won't die. And we're not talking about him specifically, but the overall story, which, again, Republicans have been trying to bring to light for over a couple of years now. And the media can't seem to make it go away. They just want to ignore it, and they just can't. As much as they may try to bury it, we'll get into why that's happening and later on in the show as well. So without further ado, let's go ahead over to the big table. Over in the far right, the far left is the far right. Anibal, David, Cabrera. How are you, sir?
Is this working? Oh, it's working. It's great. I'm doing good. It's been a great day. It's Monday. We're entering Holy Week, so it's always good.
Yeah, and as I like to say, last Sunday was Palm Sunday. High five.
Hey,
Palm Sunday.
Oh, there we go. Right.
Yeah. If you don't know, Jonathan is a dad. Yes. That was a dad joke.
Well, that's a dad joke. I'll give you.
It's one of your, it's one of your responsibilities as a dad.
I haven't gotten into the dad jokes yet. I guess my son's 7. I haven't started doing it yet.
It's a power that it's naturally handed to you. Along with the birth of your child, it just kind of comes naturally.
I was not so enchanted.
You have to dig deep, Michael.
Okay.
You have to dig deep. And this lovely gentleman here to my right in the center chair is State Representative for District 57, Michael Beltran.
Heyo.
Good to be here.
What's up, buddy?
I'm doing all right.
It's probably been well over a year, if not 2, since you've been on the show.
It was January last year. So, yeah, a little over a year.
Wow. Okay. Look at you keeping track. I appreciate that.
I remember it was the first week of the year. I remember because I was really busy, but I came on the show. I remember doing a million things.
Yeah. Well, you're still really busy.
Busy.
You're a practicing attorney and a practicing state representative. As a matter of fact, today you tell us a little bit about your event with the governor.
So, yeah, we had a bill signing over at Ray J this morning. We signed the Fatherhood Bill just to try to provide more tools, both for kids whose families are not intact, and then for fathers who may be struggling with substance abuse or incarceration or things like that, things that may prevent them from spending the time with their kids that they should.
Gotcha.
And we had a lot of good folks. The coach was there, and the governor was there. A lot of my colleagues,
Arian and oh gosh, Tony Dungy.
He was there. Yep. I was standing right
Bruce
next to him.
Arians as well, or no?
I didn't.
Because I know it was at the Buccaneers facility. I mean,
It was at the Bucs facility.
Okay,
it was
cool.
at their indoor training facility.
Right. And so, as a father, where do I go get my check?
Oh, it's not for you. You're a good. Presumably, you're a good father, so you probably don't need
on paper, we can make things happen.
That's right. Yeah. I can develop a little bit of a problem.
You're from Miami, so it's not that difficult.
And Colombian. So,
oh my God, 2 whammies there.
It's I qualify. No, but in all seriousness, we were talking a little bit offline, but it's one of these things that, funny enough, in the initial inception, in the initial kind of brainstorming of what I wanted this show to be like, it was actually more along the lines of, what I'm about to ask you, which is more of the behind the scenes stuff, more of the stuff that people don't actually know how these things happen, much like they don't know how campaigns come about and are done. And in the same way, now being a state representative, the governor, DeSantis, I think does a great job at it. Governor Scott did a great job at it too, about making sure that they're covered the state. And they do a lot of appearances, talking about the wins that they had in the legislature. who decides, like, who shows up to these things, who stands behind or next to the governor? You were telling me a little bit about a bill you had that ended up getting signed in Miami. And so why Miami in that case? I mean, was it something that particularly impacted that part of the state, or?
And also, how do we get on the list to actually get onto these events? I want to know. I mean, I can get ready quickly.
So the trip I did to Miami was May or June last year, and that was for the corporate espionage bill, and that was the bill. I was the House sponsor of that bill, and I think they signed it in Miami because it was a little bit about China.
Sure.
And we had some guests from the Taiwanese. It's not an embassy, but we call it their institute or whatever.
Sure,
we call our quote unquote embassy in Taipei. We call it the American Institute, and they have got a sort of a similar embassy and consulate arrangement in major American cities. And those folks,
but even that's pretty bold for them to show up to a press conference centered around corporate espionage, which we know China is incredibly guilty of.
Oh, they are. And obviously, Taiwan is an adversary of the People's Republic, if you will. And so those folks were headquartered out of Miami, and then Miami's kind of more of an international destination. And then some of the sponsors of my bill and related bills were in the South Florida area. So as a confluence of those factors, they had the bill signing there. We just in the last couple months, we've probably had half a dozen bill signings. We had the
but the one you did today, for instance, obviously it's in the region. It's in the Tampa Bay region, in the county especially. So that makes a lot of sense too. Are you ever called to some that are, let's say, not tied to you in any particular way? Do they just want some of the legislators there to kind of have a presence, or? So
I was a co-sponsor of the bill today, but I wasn't the lead sponsor or anything. Last week we had the 1557, the Parental Rights and Education Bill, that was signed in Pasco County. I debated the bill in committee, and I also actually was working on some of the language in the bill. And there was one time when they were going to do something I didn't think was appropriate, and I told them that, and they withdrew that amendment. And so, and
that's one of the bills we're going to be talking about.
I played a role in shaping that bill. It was also in the area, and it was something the governor knew I was interested and concerned about. It was reasonably close, but some people came from the East Coast. Right, East Coast of Florida for that bill. Some people came from Jacksonville. For that purpose. So
especially because it also got a lot of media attention, right? Yeah. And I'm guessing that draws in some legislators as well, because they want to have some association to that bill going, into law.
Yes, and that bill, that bill signing was kind of. Usually they don't tell me. They'll call usually a day, or usually they call over the weekend, and usually the bill signings are on Monday, and they'll call you over the weekend and tell you where it is. I think for the Miami one, they might have called me on Friday because we had to travel down there. Yep. And I was going to the air show. It was the air show a couple of weeks ago in town, and someone from the governor's office called me. It was the next day, and they said, they did it very short notice, and they asked us to keep it quiet because they didn't want a massive protest.
Should have put you on one of the Blue Angels, and
they could have. Yeah, maybe the governor took that down from Tallahassee, but anyway, there were a few people with sides, but it wasn't. The event was not, and the media had an opportunity to attend. But
that's part of the strategy too, right? Is to avoid some of the chaos with the protesters and that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. But the media is always there. We always,
can always count on them.
No, well, I mean, they always have there must be someone in the governor's office who gives the media some notice, and we always have a good crowd. I mean, we had a really big crowd at Branda Honda back. Just before Thanksgiving.
I remember that. Yeah, we're literally about 100 yards from there.
Yeah, that was very well. Yeah, I guess we are now. Yeah, yeah. So that was very well attended. That was indoor at the car dealership there. And then it'll really depend on the subject matter. We filled the room up at the school up in Pasco.
What I like too about what DeSantis has done maybe a little differently, at least it seems this way, is that he does also go and stops in a lot of the small towns along the way, and he stops into a lot of the, it's not just like, oh, I'm in Tampa, so I'm going to stop into some local businesses. He could literally be in somewhere in the middle of nowhere in the state, and he'll pop into a restaurant, he'll pop into a small business, not in just the kind of big regional kind of areas.
Yeah, the governor travels quite a bit. I think the governor may travel more than I do, and I have to travel to get to Tallahassee, and he doesn't.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, and sometimes I'm there and he's here.
Oh, funny.
And or sometimes he'll have a bill signing back here, and if I have committee that day, I actually can't make it back, even if he might be 5 or 10 miles from my house. So
right. Well, he has the luxury of the jet.
He's got the plane, yeah. So sometimes I say, well, if I can ride on your jet, I can make it.
That's right. Which I mean, they do typically at the federal level. If the president wants to take some legislators, he'll usually invite them to come along. But it's funny, a lot of people forget. Rick Scott got rid of the jet, because he had his own. I mean, so it was a nice savings there for about 8 years for the taxpayers. But now we had to get a new one. I'm guessing, for Governor DeSantis.
Yes, in 2019, they actually at one point they had a plane that they had seized as a forfeiture in a criminal proceeding.
Oh, nice.
And that was what they were using because they didn't have any other planes because Governor Scott had sold the jets. They were using that, and at one point there was some mechanical problem. The governor was fine, but there was a mechanical problem. They did have to land or divert. There was some issue, and so at that point, right after the governor was elected in my first session and his first session as governor, we appropriated some money, and I believe we purchased some.
Now, this is your second term. Your first term was primarily under Speaker Corcoran, right? Did I have that right?
Oliva.
Oh, Oliva. Oh, okay. So you missed Corcoran.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, Corcoran was education commissioner when I came.
And like they'd say in Office Space, I wouldn't say you missed him, Bob.
Well, I mean, we definitely interacted, and we have interacted because he's been education commissioner.
No, I understand, but I understand. I mean, it was. I just remember a lot of the legislators saying it was a pretty tough environment. When he was speaker, Oliva. Now Chris Sprouls, who's from the region as well. Give us a little bit of background now that you're 4 years in, second term. What's that been like for you? What's the experience been like? How do you feel differently today than you did when you first got started?
Well, I guess, people say, is it what you expected? And I say yes. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Because, quite frankly, I expected it to be roughly what it is.
Okay.
It's a difficult process. The special interests have too much power.
A little chaotic, a little dysfunctional.
A little chaotic, little dysfunctional. There are things that we don't always get done that we should. Mm-hmm. There are things that perhaps we shouldn't do, and we do.
Sure, right.
And sometimes you're able to stop them. Sometimes you're able to blunt bad bills, and sometimes things happen, and you're in the minority and you vote against it. And then there are some things. There's a bill. I'm not going to say which one, but there were 4 or 5 things I liked and 2 or 3 things I didn't like, and and then you just kind of got to make a tough choice.
Sure.
And so. Overall, the process, it's a tough process. It's a lot of sacrifice in terms of my business and my family and things like that. I wouldn't want, let me put it this way, if there was someone else better in my community that I thought could do the job better, I would happily step aside and let them do it. But I don't want, the things that frustrate you about Tallahassee are why I think I should be there, because I don't want the bad actors to be there without me there, at least trying to
well, let me frame that into a question, which is, because I do ask, why in the world would anybody want to go up there? A, for the time that you have to commit to it, and B, for the amount of money they're paying you to be there, which is next to nothing.
What, 16?
It's like below minimum wage.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it's like $30,000, isn't it?
Yeah, 29.
Yeah, $29,000.
It's not below minimum wage.
Okay, well,
depends how much your time you spend.
That's right.
Very true.
It's a $15 minimum wage. You can hit that pretty quick. But,
which
we don't get overtime.
I know
either.
there's McDonald's that are paying $20 an hour.
I've been on the floor real late. I should be getting some overtime.
Well, you're about to have a special session.
Holiday pay.
Oh my
and all
God,
this
special
stuff.
session. I
Easter
love it.
week. I got to go up next week.
So what was your, let's say, versus when you decided to run the first time to now, again, at the end of your second term, halfway through your term limit, right?
That's true.
Is your goal the same, or has it changed? Like, now, knowing the way the sausage is made, now are your goals different? Have you accomplished what you set out to accomplish? Where are you kind of in your personal kind of pursuit of all of this? Well,
when I ran for re-election in 2020, I looked back at my palm card from 2018, and there were 6 or 7 items on that. One of them was increasing funding in the classroom, protecting the unborn, keeping taxes low, all of those things. And I looked at the palm card and I felt really good. I mean, I was doing my interviews for the endorsements and the re-elect. And I was able to say, look, I promised 7 or 8 things here. Here's my old palm card. I did all of this. Is a palm card from 2 years ago. I can't go back and change it. Okay.
Sure.
But it just so happens I did every single one of those things because I meant it. I knew I wanted to do those things. I knew it was the right thing to do. And I figured I could get those done. And together with my colleagues, we got those things done. And so I haven't accomplished every last thing. First of all, we still have some time left. Second, there are new things that you realize that need to be done. And then there are things that take a while. I mean, I had some really good bills. And I made a deeper run than other people have with those policies in the past. But there are some things that got across the finish line and some that didn't.
When you have things that come about unexpectedly, like COVID.
Yeah, things like COVID that come up, although that hasn't really necessarily been the centerpiece of some of the things I was doing. Although there were important things we needed to address, mainly in terms of a defensive nature, in the sense that things happened in the last, say, 2 years, 2.5 years, however you want to date the coronavirus. Things have happened that we never imagined when I ran in 2018, that people would be shutting down your church or telling you that you had to get a vaccination in order to be out in society or able to work at a private employer or things of that nature. Or that they
even
were
mandating medical equipment,
that, or shutting down schools and things of this nature. Let alone some of the things we've seen in the culture wars. So there were things that you couldn't even imagine that were just to get back to the status quo and protect the freedoms that we thought we had. In fact, we do have those freedoms, but certainly they've been challenged, particularly by folks in Washington. Just to kind of get back to neutral, we've done quite a bit of work. A lot of what we've been doing is defensive. Now in Florida, we have a Republican trifecta, and we have a fairly energetic leadership. And so we've also been able to move the needle forward on a lot of things. But a lot of energy has been spent on just defending ourselves, really, from protecting us as the free state of Florida from, I almost feel like, I'm some small little country, and you look at some of these other countries and we're like, we're being persecuted by the capital sometimes, because you feel we're 20, 21, 22 million people, however many you want to say, in a country of over 300 million, ruled by folks who don't share our values.
Right.
And, you feel like you read about some foreign country that has some province that they're persecuting. And sometimes that's how you feel.
Well, even here locally, right? So our local school district was penalized for their mask enforcements. And then you hear now you have the federal government basically saying, oh, don't worry, we'll take care of those financial penalties, because the state legislature obviously, was penalizing you for some of those mandates. So like you said, you're kind of working against, a much larger country, in that essence, because they're kind of pushing their agenda, and trying to find a way to get their agenda in while the state legislature is working on theirs.
Yeah, and we have at the end of the day, we have federalism in the United States. So the state has an awful lot of power. Remember, all the sovereignty comes from the state, right? So the state created the national government, right? We created and ratified the Constitution. And then we created all the local governments, including the counties and the municipalities. And so under our system, the sovereignty lies in the state unless it's been delegated elsewhere. And so that bulwark of federalism has really helped us in Florida. And a lot of for example, some of the coronavirus and the vaccine mandates and things like that, those were largely because of our federalism. We were able to push back on a lot of those things.
So having been in the legislature under Speaker Leva and Speaker Sprouse, and then 2 different governors as well, which one do you see? I mean, I would imagine the obvious is the speaker, but also how much difference or impact does it make, does the governor make on the kind of overall environment in the legislature?
Well, we've had a very good relationship with the governor. I have, and most of my colleagues have, and the speakers, the Oliva and Sprouse, have also had a good relationship. I think could certainly count on one hand the number of times when either there was a problem with the other chamber or there was a problem with the governor. Obviously, we're working through some of those issues right now. That
hiccups.
We've all been together numerous times since the end of session, and there's certainly no awkwardness in the room or anything like that. And I think we're going to end up I think they're all in a good place now. I think we're all in a good place, and I think we're going to end up with a good product. And I think we'll be better off having gone through this process than we would have if we if we hadn't had those discussions. So things are going very well. The Governor DeSantis, by and large, and I mean 98% of the time, gets along extremely well with both branches of the legislature, and. It's really, I mean, he's a good conservative governor. He's energetic and he's trying to do the right thing. And
which of the two would you say has pressed harder in the legislature to advance their agenda, Governor Scott or Governor DeSantis?
Well, I think that Governor DeSantis, like I said, I mean, he will come up with a proposal or somebody else will come up with a proposal and he will endorse it. And by and large, those policies are being implemented. Like on the in the fall when we had the special on coronavirus, nobody got exactly what they wanted. There was definitely some give and take, but by and large,
as it should be.
The governor, yeah, and there should be, and we should have checks and balances, and we should have a discussion, and we should try to improve things and have some give and take. But by and large, the governor's been able to implement his policies, and I think that's a good thing. I find myself in alignment with the governor, probably that 98% of the time, and so we've done very well. I think Scott. There was at least one occasion when Scott vetoed something, and something we've brought back and had since Governor Scott left office, and he definitely had some tension. I know he vetoed a family law reform bill. There was definitely some tension with the House over some of his jobs programs, and then there was things like Visit Florida, which kind of come up again and again, and so there was a little bit more tension under Governor Scott with the House leadership, I would say.
Yeah, we're looking at redistricting right now. Obviously, the dust hasn't quite settled on all that yet. So
no, it hasn't.
We can't get into really how that's going to affect your reelection and what happens with with your office. But to that extent. Did you have any hands in the process? I mean, for your average legislator, I mean, how much really do they have in regards to input in a redistricting process?
Well, I've given the input at every stage of the process, both legislative and congressional. My constituents have been very clear. Number one is they don't want East Hillsborough to be split up any more than it needs to be in order to achieve the population numbers and to otherwise comply with the Constitution and good.
For state house or Congress or both?
Well, for both.
Okay.
We apply the exact same standards to both. And so I fought as much as I could on the state legislative maps to make sure that they were compact and kept our community together. Quite frankly, I don't think me or my constituents are that happy with the legislative maps, but I just definitely did what I could, and they improved it from what they had to what was enacted. In terms of the congressional maps, it was the same thing. I found that Hillsborough, this is all things I've said on the floor of the House and I've said in the newspaper, so there's no nuclear secret here or saying anything that we shouldn't be talking about. They split Hillsborough County 4 ways, and one of the maps they split Hillsborough County 6 ways, and I fought very hard to get the 4 instead of the 6, and 4 is still too much because they split counties like Miami-Dade, which have over twice our population. They only split them that many ways.
Right.
So why we should, with our more modest population, you could fit all of Hillsborough basically into 2, and they split us.
You would think the smarter thing would be to keep the bigger counties intact.
And I was in Plant City last week, and I said, basically, if I go in this room, I run 100 yards that way, you're in the Polk district. I go 100 yards south, you're in the Sarasota and Manatee district. I go a couple miles north, and you're in. It literally split Plant City, not just once, twice. It would split Plant City 3 times. Where I was speaking to those folks out there, so it splits not just Hillsborough, but East Hillsborough multiple times.
Well, in that community specifically, that has Plant City at large, has a lot of the same needs and the same, interests, the same, it makes no sense to split it up.
It makes no sense to split them, and that's a very small municipality. And then the other thing,
but a very important one because of the large agricultural industry.
Absolutely, and they're a small population. You should be able to fit them into a single district. Then the other real component of the issue on the congressional maps is they were drawing I mean, talk about compactness within a county for 1 minute. Let's talk about compactness within the state. They had remember Corinne Brown? Remember she went to prison. She got out on a technicality, but she went to prison for a while. Before that, she was a congresswoman. She was known as the gerrymander queen. Her district went from Jacksonville to the outskirts of Orlando. Okay. And then they fixed it. They pretended to fix it. And so what did they do? They made it go from Jacksonville wrap around Tallahassee. In other words, it goes to like West Tallahassee. It avoids East Tallahassee because it doesn't pick up the demographic that they need to draw this district that they think that they need to draw. Okay, the 14th Amendment is very clear that we treat everyone the same. We don't take into account certain factors when the government's administering any program, including and especially voting. The whole purpose of the 14th and 15th Amendments were to protect voting. Protect voting from who? From southern states that classified people based on types of things that we should not be classifying people for.
Sure.
And the idea that we're going to now do that explicitly in our state constitution or read our state constitution to require us to do that and use that to justify this antiquated and improper practice. I think that's ludicrous. The Supremacy Clause of the United States Constitution says very clearly that the United States Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Anything else notwithstanding, they specifically call out state constitutions in there. Why? Because state constitutions back in when the 14th Amendment was passed had a lot of bad things in them.
Right.
Okay. And so we shouldn't be, everyone should have an equal opportunity to vote, to live in a district and to vote for whoever they want to vote for. And we shouldn't go before an election's been done, before anyone's qualified for the ballot, before anyone's run a campaign and said which type of people should be voting for which type of people or who or where. We shouldn't be doing that. We should just draw fair districts, follow geographic boundaries, political boundaries, try to keep communities together and keep them compact. And then I guarantee you, like every other process that we follow, then you're going to get good elected officials who are going to represent their communities well, and we're not going to have any of those problems.
So pretty surprising to you that the state Supreme Court just approved the maps on seemingly more or less the first shot?
Well, so those were the state legislative maps. Nobody filed a brief to contest the state legislative maps.
Right.
And the Supreme Court still... They were very conscious of what they were doing. They said, well, nobody's contesting it, but we still need to do our constitutional duty and examine these maps and determine that they were correct. And they wrote an opinion, and it's available on the website. I read it, and they said that they complied. That's what the Supreme Court said. And so that's what they said.
Yeah.
I guess I'll leave it there. We'll see what happens.
All right. And to wrap up that kind of our first topic, which you kind of just went right into there, special sessions. I heard we might be having one on property insurance.
Definitely on redistricting, possibly on property insurance.
Federal redistricting.
Federal redistricting.
Got it.
Correct.
Okay. And then possibly on property.
Definitely on
homeowners.
federal redistricting. We'll see. Like I said, we'll see what happens.
No, and definitely. I mean, Florida being what it is, I mean, pretty surprising that they would just kind of, kick the can on property insurance.
Well, we didn't kick the can. I mean, let's back up because that's a narrative that I don't know who's pushing that, but that's the narrative that's been pushed from, I guess, certain legislators or legislator. And then also by the media, which I've never seen the media want litigation reform and property insurance like so much, except in the last 10 days. Because 3 years ago in 2019, when we were in the special session, there was a very aggressive bill, and they said, "Oh, this bill is going to prevent people from making claims against their." Homeowners insurance.
Yeah.
Now this year they're saying, oh, the legislature is not doing anything and they're asking for more draconian measures than the ones that we had 3 years ago that we passed, obviously over their objection, but nonetheless implemented into law. So let's just have the record straight.
Now, any of that because of the result of what happened in Miami?
Well, that's so there's the surf side, which is the condo inspections, and then there's homeowners property insurance. So let's keep them separate, and let's do the homeowners insurance because you brought that one up first. Okay, homeowners insurance 2019, we banned assignment of benefit claims. They said it's all these assignment of benefits. If the bad actors doing assignment of benefits, ban AOB or regulate AOB so that it cannot be abused, and you're going to solve all the problems. We did exactly what they wanted. Okay, we put in a new litigation regime there, and obviously that wasn't enough. 2020, I was the lead House sponsor to get rid of attorney fee multipliers. Let me break that down. Real quick. So the insurance statute has a one-way attorney fee, meaning the consumer can get their fees from the insurer if they win. If they lose, the insurer cannot get the attorney fees from the consumer. That's fair.
Okay.
That levels the playing field
Sure.
because you're going up against a big insurance company. So you have a little bit of a procedural advantage there. Fair enough. These attorneys are coming in now and claiming, $400 or $500 an hour hourly rates. And that's not the rates that are commonly charged for that type of litigation. That's
Right.
more of a commodity type litigation. It's usually the defense attorneys usually bill the insurance company, say $200 an hour. But still the courts are awarding $400 or $500 an hour. You know what? Fine. Okay. They won the case. Okay. But then they're coming in and they're saying, I need 2 or 3 times that because of the risk I took. It's like, well, they're not that risky because the insurance companies are settling cases they shouldn't, settling frivolous cases because it costs more to defend than it does to settle.
Right.
So nobody really ever gets left holding the bag on when they file the case and they're not able to win. In fact, the case has settled. The chances of a homeowner losing a jury verdict in a property damage claim are almost nil. So there really isn't a lot of risk, and it really isn't supposed to be $400 or $500 an hour. That already has a bit of a risk premium involved. And they say, well, we need to attract attorneys to the practice of doing homeowners insurance claims. Well, it's like, no, you don't. Like you have people advertising on the bus, including a bus that was in my way when I was driving into the Capitol to run this bill.
Right.
And I said that in committee that day. So the people are advertising to do this type of work. You don't need to pay more and more and more attorney fees in order to attract attorneys. You have the attorney fee award, and there are attorneys who are getting that fee award and are able to recover for their clients, and the system is working fine for the consumer. Probably there's too many claims. Okay. So I passed that bill off the floor of the House, and it died in the Senate. Okay. 2021, we came back. That was 2020. 2021, we came back and we passed legislation to ban the solicitation of the people who go around and say, you make a roof claim and I'll give you a gift card. And that's totally illegal because you're supposed to collect the deductible. Right, that every insurance policy, and it's fraud if you don't collect the deductible. And if I give you a gift card that's equivalent or a portion of the deductible, it's essentially kicking the deductible back. So you're not collecting the deductible. So that's insurance fraud. But we codified it that specific practice is explicitly insurance fraud, even though it already was. And so we did that, and we did a number of things. We changed the fee shifting so that you basically whoever's being more reasonable pre-suit is entitled to collect attorney fees, so that if you're totally unreasonable, you don't get to collect the attorney fees. And so that should promote pre-suit settlement and people to be reasonable in their settlement demands and so forth. And that should promote more good behavior. And that law has been challenged and parts of it have been enjoined in various courts. So the idea that we haven't done anything, that's the narrative that's been spun. That idea is just ridiculous. In fact, every year, we've done something. This year we came and we had another piece of legislation, and frankly, the chambers couldn't reach consensus between the two of them. Yeah. But the idea that we've done nothing, and by the way, in 2021, the last time we addressed this, when we enacted something, they said it was going to take 18 months for the bill to have the desired effect of either reducing the insurance rates or at least mitigating the increase or whatever it was, the promised benefit of it. And then 9, 10, 11 months later, they're turning around and saying, well, we still have a problem. It's like, well, you told us, because we said to the insurance company, he says, okay, we'll do this bill.
We'll fix it.
When are my rates going down? They said it'll be 18 months. I said, that seems like a little much, but okay, you know what, we'll do it, and we'll wait 18 months and see what happens. And then they're coming back inside that window saying, A, that they need more, and B, that we didn't do anything. Right. So we've done a lot, and I think we should do more, and we're probably going to do more. But the idea that we haven't done a lot, or that the legislature, do you want the legislature to just pass any bill that comes before you? No, of course not. Do you want the bill? No, you want us to do the give and take to get a good product. And this has been a problem for 4, 5, 6 years. They're saying it's an emergency. Well, maybe it is, but it's also, let's take the time to get it right.
Because we're also losing lots of insurers, aren't we? I mean, aren't there, there seem to be a large number of insurers that are going out of business or no longer writing policies in Florida?
There's no question that it's tough to do homeowners insurance in Florida. There's no question about that. But I'll say this, is we've provided a couple of different sets of tools to the insurance companies. And I say this every time they ask me to come to their conferences. I come to their conferences, and we talk about the tort reform, but I also say to the lobbyists and to the insurance company executives, I say, look, I've given you the tools. I've given you a couple of sets of tools.
Right.
It's like you have like 3 toolboxes. You have 3 toolboxes on your table, and you say you still can't fix the sink. It's like, well, get under the sink and get those wrenches out and try to do it, because they're not using these tools. They're still not litigating.
Yeah.
The insurance company is...
Okay, wait. Honorable Representative, I have full confidence in why you're in Tallahassee after all of these conversations. And I feel that you are the absolute correct person to be in Tallahassee.
Well, thank you.
For these purposes. We can go down this rabbit hole, and for some odd reason, more people are watching because we started talking.
Well, because if you're a homeowner like you are, I mean, this is, again, it's especially if you're anywhere near the waterfront.
I will make no comments about my homeowners insurance policies, because the fact that we still have it is absolutely amazing. And I will leave it at that. Okay.
So what we want to do is also get into again, the Parental Rights Bill. Okay. Now,
you don't want to talk about insurance anymore? I didn't give you enough information.
No, I was totally, in on it, because again, I know that's an important issue. I mean, I'm not currently a homeowner, but I know that for those that are, it's an incredibly important and costly issue.
Oh, it's going up every year, and I complain sometimes to the lobbyists who ask me to do these reforms.
It's worse than college tuition.
Yeah, because they shouldn't be paying. Let me just finish with this. The insurance company's got 2 obligations. One is to pay legitimate claims. That's what you pay them for. The other is, if somebody makes a frivolous claim, don't just pay it and then settle it, and then say that your costs went up, and go to Office of Insurance Regulation and say you need a rate increase. You're going to charge everyone more. If it's a frivolous claim, it's your obligation to litigate that for your own company, your own shareholders, for the system, and for your ratepayers, the policyholders.
So you're telling me lawyers are the only people getting money out of this?
Yeah, I mean, basically, that's kind of how it boils down. I mean, they're really milking the system, to try to get every single dollar they can.
And it's like a dozen law firms file like the majority of the claims,
right?
And it's like there's like 100,000 of us in Florida, and it's like a couple law firms that are filing these claims. I mean, I've never done a property damage claim, and the insurance companies, when I do have a claim that involves the insurance company, believe me, they're not paying out. They make me do my work and earn whatever money I make.
Okay, so back to the Parental Rights Bill.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, now we were actually talking about the homeowners insurance, which there's an existing problem that that's being trying to solve. This was something that kind of came out of the blue. Okay, there wasn't any particular story that that made national headlines, and there wasn't any kind of an incident that sparked the need for this type of legislation, or at least not that I can recall. But now it's seeming to have been almost ahead of its time. Right, because we're actually in the news this week, over the past week, New Jersey has said that not only second graders, but even first graders are going to start getting gender and sexual education as part of their curriculum. Mind you that they have real problems they could be tackling, but this is what they've chosen to advance in their curriculum. Where did this spawn from? Where did this Parental Rights Bill spawn from? And I mean, we've seen the polling. The polling on both sides of the aisle has been favorable. Really, it's the ones to the far left, and unfortunately now Disney has become part of that far left that have become very vocal in opposing this bill. So where did this spawn from?
Well, okay, so is that a lot of things that I want to respond to? You see, ask where it comes from. I guess the thing is, like, when does sex ed become a self-feeding issue, right? So, obviously, at some point, kids need to learn about contraception, about safe sex, about healthy relationships. They need to learn that.
Sure.
Probably at some point in high school.
Right.
Okay. But the problem is you start teaching it in high school, then you start teaching it to freshmen in high school. Then you say, well, I got to teach 7th and 8th graders. And they talk to the younger siblings. And then the 6th graders and the 5th graders and the 4th graders are asking questions. And then you say, well, the kids are learning about this type of thing. Yeah. If you introduce the topics in 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade, then by 5th, 6th, 7th grade, some kids are going to be doing things. Yeah, okay. Right. If you wait to introduce the concepts until high school, then even the most precocious kid might be 7th, 8th grade. And if you introduce them only later in high school, then maybe, but the point is, the more you put these ideas in the kid's head, the more kids are going to be out asking questions, experimenting, doing things. And then then you have to educate them, because they got to understand at least the risks of what's going on. or at least understand healthy relationships and so forth. And then you're gonna create where you got to start addressing it earlier and earlier, or at least there's some ostensible thing. It shouldn't be addressed before high school. Okay.
Well, and you also have the component now of the societal pressure, right? The peer pressure, and wanting to feel included, wanting to feel accepted, which is a big, that's a natural part of life in those teenage years.
Yeah.
And so you've got kids now who refuse to declare their gender, or they refuse to accept that they're straight, or they won't admit it because they don't want to feel like they're part of the out crowd. Because currently, I mean, at least from what I've read, from what I see out there, it's almost unpopular now to be straight.
Well, this shouldn't even be something that should be discussed really until high school, I would say. I mean, if you need, you absolutely. Well, I remember
when that's the only time you got sex ed. It was like in 10th grade.
If you absolutely need to talk about like the AIDS, they taught about AIDS. At a fair. I mean, I think I was in 3rd grade. I remember sitting in my 3rd grade classroom. I didn't say this on the floor. I'm going to say it here. Okay, I was in my 3rd grade classroom. I mean, I didn't know about those sort of things. I grew up in New York City, okay, for those who don't know, and they had folks. I'm just trying to say this play. I mean, they had people who were HIV positive, and they felt badly that they had gotten the disease or spread the disease, and they're whatever they were doing, trying to do some public service to mitigate that. So they were coming into the grade schools and talking about HIV prevention. And maybe it was great. Maybe it was necessary to address. I don't think it was necessary to address it that early. But this guy came in the classroom one day and he said, I think I infected over 100 men.
Oh my gosh.
And boy, like as a 3rd grader, what is he saying? Like, I don't know what that means.
Right.
I think I went home, I asked my mom. And then my mom had to address that to me in the 3rd grade, how somebody would go and infect 100 men. And like, I didn't really need to be thinking about that at all. Certainly not knowing about that sort of thing probably for another 5 or 10 years. So, the idea, just that you put that in my head in 3rd grade.
It just starts to snowball.
In 6th or 7th grade. It starts that
snowball where it creates a whole bunch of other conversations and questions.
Yeah.
But questions that the society is not really wanting to have the conversation. It's one of the most difficult conversations that parents have with their children. And so right then and there, the school system is trying to input themselves into this conversation. And I get it, wanting to teach about safe sex, wanting to teach about abstinence, giving choices and everything else. However, us bringing that down to kindergarten into 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade, I think that's very inappropriate. And it's something that was, again, I agree with Jonathan. It wasn't something that we were really talking about, but now it's completely necessary.
Well, because it took this left turn, which before the show we were talking about how great the left is at marketing, right? Because they can kind of they can simplify, and it's just basic marketing 101, taking a complicated messaging and a message and simplifying it into its most common denominator. And they turned it into this "Don't Say Gay" bill, which it really has nothing to do with sexuality at all, other than the simple fact that you're basically telling people who are employed by the school state system to not talk to children about sexuality and gender.
That's the important thing, because I want to come back to some of these examples in a second, but let's talk about that. I call it the bill that doesn't say "Don't Say Gay," or it's a 7-page bill. There's strike throughs of things we delete. We underline the things we add. It's double spaced. There's one section. It's 3 or 4 lines. I highlighted it in committee and spoke about it. And it just says that you don't speak about these sorts of things until the kids are out of the 3rd grade. And then after the 3rd grade, you do so in an age appropriate manner. You can frankly speak about it 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade. You can speak about it in high school. You can speak about it at home. The kids can speak about it, even in the class, even in the hallways. It says that the teachers don't make it part of the curriculum.
Right.
Okay. It doesn't mean like it's never discussed. It means it's not part of the former curriculum that they're forcing down to the students at that early age. That's all the bill says. It doesn't make any value judgment about how anyone lives their lives. It doesn't make any value judgment about what consenting adults do. It says we're not going to introduce, as the state, as the educator in the classroom without the parental supervision, that we're not going to introduce those concepts at a very early age. Right. If you come from a family, same-sex family, maybe that's something that you address with your kids, and you address it at home, or you address it in an appropriate way, in the way that the parents decide is appropriate.
Because they're exposed to that every single day.
And then maybe you address it in a different way. But that's a decision that family and my family and every other family should make for themselves. It shouldn't be imposed by the state.
Well, you would think, and then again, there are those in the gay community that see the bill for what it is. And especially if you're a parent, gay or not, I would imagine that when it comes to the issue of homosexuality and how that kind of plays into society at large, like you would want to be the one to explain that to your child.
Right. And the thing is, the kids don't, when you introduce the concept, if you come in first grade and say, talk about gay, straight, this and that, okay, then the kids, oh, am I gay, am I straight? They're going to start worrying about it, trying to figure it out.
Right.
If you don't say anything about that, the kids aren't going to be thinking about that for years and years.
It'll happen on its own.
Like if you put the idea in somebody's head, then it's going to be an issue. If you don't, don't think of an elephant, like you just did. Okay, you know what I'm saying. So if I tell you about something or I mention it even in passing, then they're going to start thinking about it. And this whole brouhaha about it. And by the way, we prescribe a number of things. We say that you have to teach certain types of history. We say it's not unusual for the state to pass a law that says what you teach in the schools. And you say there was no particular trigger. I'll give you an example at the high school or the middle school. This is the middle school in my community. I want to tell you about another thing that happened back in New York growing up. The middle school, Randall Middle School, Lithia, Florida. Middle school, not high school.
This is now today.
This is now today. It's like a year ago, or just within, since I was reelected, and my constituents, not just my constituents, my neighbors, my friends, but also constituents, but people from my block came to me, multiple parents complaining about this, concerned about this. They had a gay day at the school.
Yep.
Not a gay club, not like a elective class, not like a after school activity, or you go to the counselor, a gay day. That the principal prescribed that there was going to be a gay day. And if you were this thing, you had to wear that color or type of clothes. You were that, you had to wear this type of clothes.
Oh, wow.
And if you didn't want to get involved in that sort of thing, and you didn't want to be involved one way or another, you were there to learn English and mathematics and science,
right?
And you just showed up in your regular street clothes, then you were going to be known as someone who
ostracized.
Ostracized, exactly.
Yeah.
You were going to be ostracized. And why should you be ostracized? I just want to come into school and learn my things, and do my sports, and eat my lunch and go home to my family. And I don't want to get involved in that sort of agenda, but you were going to be ostracized. Now, in high school...
And and this has puzzled me even with, Pride Parade and all that stuff, is like, why does this stuff need to be celebrated? Right? If it's supposed to be so normal and it's supposed to be so acceptable and it's supposed to be nothing out of the ordinary, then why is it celebrated? I mean, we don't, you don't go out there and you don't see hetero parades.
Right. Yeah, but that's an argument for a different day. At the end of the day,
but it all ties back. The problem is that it trickles. It trickles down. No, stop. Because the parade,
celebrate something, and they should celebrate it. Now, I do believe there should be a difference.
Yes, but the problem is that's where the agenda starts.
And it comes to a public school education. I don't think that needs to go there, but automatically going to the point of why.
But Anibal, if they didn't feel the need to hold parades and gay days and stuff like that, like they do at Disney and they do in cities around the world, the
Christian community used to do parades all the time. They used to be in large parades through downtown.
When was the last one?
I would say probably in the late 90s was the last time something like that.
I don't remember ever seeing like a Christian parade.
I've been to many. I actually was one of the flag holders for it. So
it's the same thing, which again,
if a group of private individuals want to have a parade, let them have a parade.
That's fine. But what I'm saying is that is the inception point for these things to trickle down into the school system. If it didn't exist out in the culture, it wouldn't exist in the school system.
Do you guys remember growing up? Remember VHS? Remember when teacher? So the history teacher would show a film, right? And the film might be an hour and a half, 2 hours, standard Hollywood film, but you had 45-minute class periods. So remember that teacher would have the thing, they would fast forward through the parts, so they wanted to show you the historical part, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So we had some film, it was about Pocahontas and the early settlers in the Virginia colony. Okay. And remember, with time limit, right? So he's got to fast forward. He's got to fast forward through at least half of the film. And this is in seventh grade history class, European and American history, whatever it was. And what part did he decide to show? My 7th grade history teacher. He saw John Smith and Pocahontas going at it. Okay.
Oh no!
And I tell you, I mean,
God.
people told me. I mean, my parents. You'd ask a question. My parents were matter of fact about it. I mean, there was like some of the nothing was hidden for me. Everything was explained at an age appropriate thing. But for some reason, it was like younger kid. It didn't really click for me. It didn't really click why you do that, how you do that, why you wanted how the whole thing worked. I saw that. I saw the film in the history class, not in health class, not in high school, not in biology class, not in science class. In 7th grade history, that's when it clicked. That's when I figured it all out. Why I should have had to figure that out in 7th grade in my history class, of all places. Yeah, I'm serious. Yeah, and it was like, and it was, I don't say that with any kind of a glee. It's not a good memory.
Yeah. Because of the shock of it, right?
Because of the shock. And it just kind of, they gave enough information in that film that the whole thing made sense. And it was like, it sounds maybe, I don't know, maybe I was.
Which now we come to find out may not have even been historically accurate.
Well, whether it was historically accurate, but the point was he had to cut some had to fast forward through some portion of that film in order to show it in the allotted time.
And that was the
part that he decided to show. And they had the VHS. It's you fast forward through it. Yeah. Obviously, you can fast forward on the DVD, and they have to curate the film. And that's what he decided to show off, a film that probably oughtn't have been shown
in the first place
at all, let alone in its entirety or in emphasizing that portion. So I say that then probably that put me at least 2 or 3 years ahead of what I would have figured out otherwise.
Sure.
And so my point is if you introduce the concepts, then people are going to figure it out, and then things are going to go from there. But this is not, by the way, it doesn't say anything about any particular group, about how anyone lives their lives. It just says we don't talk about it. Not that it's right, wrong, or indifferent.
Yeah.
Just says, like, we're not going to introduce this to very young children.
Yeah, but that's what the left hates. The left hates the not segregating peoples by gender, by race, by ethnicity, by all of that stuff. The left enjoys that kind of divisiveness when it comes to the community and when it comes to education. So I think that's what's really pissing them off at the end of the day, that they're not being allowed to say something when they are allowed to say anything they want. It's almost like they had to make up an excuse for there to be an argument.
Yeah, I mean, it was, and the idea that we started some kind of a culture war. I mean, a colleague of mine said on the House floor, I mean, I'm paraphrasing his argument. He was first elected. He had gone in and out of office, so he reset his term limits. He was elected in 2008. That was the year that Barack Obama was elected.
Yeah.
I'm just going to paraphrase it because it's really compelling. And he said in 2008, we both ran campaigns. Me and Barack Obama agreed on at least one thing, which is that, marriage was between a man and a woman. Okay. This is 2008. I'm not saying it is or isn't. I'm just saying this is what these two gentlemen said in 2008.
Sure.
By 2012, Barack Obama had reversed course on that. And then by the mid-teens, the Supreme Court had said, had struck down the law to the extent that any two adults couldn't get married, and then that ship has sailed. And not only has that ship sailed, but now it's, if you want to prevent people from teaching to your kindergarten through third grader about that sort of thing, or other types of things are frankly more graphic than marriage, which is kind of one thing, then I guess you're a bigot, or you're not consistent with American values, or whatever it is. It's like, he said, well, who started the culture war?
Yeah.
It's not like we were in some period of stability.
Well,
we went and picked some fight.
We have seen examples of teachers, out there, again, really kind of putting this front and center in front of children. We had this one teacher who I believe was in a middle school, made their kids pledge allegiance to the LGBTQ flag, claiming because she couldn't find an American flag. So she just happened to have an LGBTQ flag.
Pull up a flag on your phone.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
You can just go onto TikTok and see these teachers that are making these absolutely disgusting content. And you're like, these are the people that are teaching, and they are freely putting it online. Right. They're doing these things.
And so they think they're getting away with something, and again, I think what COVID did was it actually allowed parents to get closer to what their kids were learning. And it really revealed to them that, the education that their kids are getting is not all that they thought it was cracked up to be. And so, like we saw in Virginia, I think parental rights and educational issues are going to be the forefront of the next gubernatorial election here in Florida. And again, it's something that I think, Governor DeSantis has fortunately led the way. And I don't know if what's happening in New Jersey is a response to the bill that passed here in Florida.
No, I think they just tried to slip it in and see if no one was going to say anything.
Yeah.
And it was just it's wrong time, wrong place. And it's really showing what people, because then we're like, well, who's actually talking about this? And you're like, and then 2 days later, you get to find out that actually New Jersey education system is slipping this into it.
Well,
and
what's crazy
now
is
the world is going to hell in a handbasket.
they don't even develop their own curriculum. I mean, we have Stephanie Meyer, who is a friend of the show. She's running for school board in Pinellas County, and she commented on one of these stories where they're going to be teaching second graders about sexuality and gender, and all that sort of thing. And she says there are companies out there that create these curriculum.
Correct.
And then what they do is that they then, lobby these school boards to make it part of the overall curriculum for that school district. And then I think one of the organizations is called Advocates for Youth or something like that, because it's always something innocuous, right? It's always something that nobody would ever expect is doing any wrong. And they're the ones that are slipping in a lot of this sexual and gender identity curriculum into our schools.
Well, let me say something. Just kind of, you asked about the dynamic and what I've learned and about our process, because this is really important. I went up. I mean, I'm a lawyer. I'm a lawyer by training. I sit on the Judiciary Committee, and I focus a lot on that and the constitutional issues and so forth. When I leave that committee to go present a bill somewhere else, I'm invariably going to the education community. I've run more education bills than I thought I would, because there are so many problems in the education environment, and I'm not necessarily an educator, but I've become so involved. It seems every year, whether it's school choice or just making sure that kids can get on the school buses,
right,
or just this year trying to prevent pornographic books from being kept in school libraries, or things that frankly I never imagined I'd have to run that sort of bill.
Yeah,
but I do. And obviously the state has a preemptive power, and obviously the liberals are always complaining when we exercise it. But basically, we're spending a lot of time on these issues that we shouldn't have to spend time on. People taking the initiative, doing bad things, and then we have to say, no, like, we don't want you doing those sorts of things in our schools. And these are all things that the local governments, either the county commissions or the school boards or municipalities, are screwing up. And there's no substitute for winning local elections. I mean, we can preempt and preempt and preempt. And it seems like people complain that we preempt everything. It's like, well, stop governing badly at the local level and we wouldn't have to preempt.
Sure.
So these elections matter. Elections have consequences, and the local elections have serious consequences. And if we could win some of these local elections, we really need to reverse that. Yeah. We're doing great at the state level. I think we're going to do great in the national elections. We need to reverse this at there's no substitute for winning local elections. I mean, we can put a Band-Aid
Anibal
on
and I
it.
talk about this every time.
But that's the thing. The locals are so fixated on national issues and national problems and national races that it's become such an issue with us that we're having to tell them on a regular basis at every single meeting. It doesn't matter what we're talking about for national when we're still in a 62,000 vote deficit between Democrats and Republicans in Hillsborough County. Well, what are you doing to fix that deficit?
And we see great candidates that come up every cycle and they decide to run for the completely wrong office,
Correct.
Because that's all they know. All they know is Congress, Senate, and then, and so they think, and they also don't know what it entails. They don't know what the commitment is, or certainly what the financial hurdles are to even get elected at that level. And so you lose a lot of your bench, because they run for offices that, that they're not ready for, when in turn they could very easily walk into city council, county commission, school board races, and do well and win. But, they either see it beneath them, or nobody has educated them to the fact that they could actually have a bigger impact in those local elections, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, you got to put, if you're going to do public service, you got to put your ego aside, okay? Yep. Like, I get into, like, my old model car. I drive over 200 miles. Like, I stay in, like, not a place that you'd stay if you're going on vacation. Okay, they pay me $29,000 a year. It's really not glamorous. Like, if you saw my office, this office is nicer than
a lot of the legislators, are roommates. You have 2-3 people in an apartment,
or it's it's not. it's really not glamorous. I mean, you can try to make it glamorous, but then you're probably not doing the work or living the lifestyle that your constituents wanted you to do. But the point is I mean, it's if you go and you do good work and you do the public service. I mean, if you do some of these local things, it's almost you sleep in your own bed. Okay, nobody gets paid as bad as we do.
Yeah,
okay,
right.
So it's really to say that it's beneath. I mean, I started off with a fairly modest office. I mean, I didn't run for Congress out of the gate or something like that. And I've been able to make a difference. And the people say, "Do you enjoy it?" I mean, enjoy it.
Well, there's a reason you have these county commissioners that play the merry-go-round here because they're sitting there making 8 figures. I mean, 6 figures every year.
Yeah, and you know that's important work, and somebody needs to do that work.
Right.
But I guess the point is, as this office is below or above or that or this, the question is, when you're looking around, is like, can you do a better job either than the incumbent or the other candidates in the race? Can you do that job and still meet your financial obligations, meet your obligations to your family, and keep your health in order and everything like that? Yeah. And if you can do that, you can sustain that, and you can make a difference. Then you run for the office that you're best suited for. I mean, not everyone needs or wants to be a congressman. And frankly, I don't know that you make any more difference there than some other places, although you could certainly try. But
all right. Well, we haven't really taken a break since we started the show. So really quickly, let me go ahead and reset the show here as we are actually already about to wrap it up with our final topic. But joining us today, State Representative Michael Beltran from District 57, a longtime friend and friend of the show. And so we're really happy to have you. Hopefully we'll get to do maybe a little bit of a deeper kind of one-on-one profile, especially once we know kind of what the re-election situation is going to look like. But just want to remind everybody, thank you so much for watching, listening, wherever you may be doing so. We are live on Clubhouse. Got a couple guys hanging out there, so if you want to join them, you can do so. Look us up by the yard sign. We got the room going live, or you can follow me, Jonny Torres, on Clubhouse, and I'd be more than happy to follow you back. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the audio version of our podcast, Going Strong. We now hit the 140s in our ranking, and you can find us on all the social media podcast platforms: Google, Apple, Spotify, Audible, Amazon, iHeartRadio, Odyssey, and Samsung podcast platforms. And we appreciate you liking, sharing, subscribing to us on those podcast platforms. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you ring the bell, is what the kids say. Anyways, but we want to kind of go ahead and wrap up today's show with, more of a federal issue. And even so, I mean, it's one that we felt that Republicans were really sounding the alarm on right before the election, and the media conveniently ignored, which is Hunter Biden and the now infamous laptop, and the amount of information that has, continuing to come out about what has actually been on this laptop. And it's bad when even Vox basically succumbs to, the fact that they have to address the story and they have to report on it accurately, because it is becoming an issue for the Biden family. Now, for those of you that may be paying attention more on the surface, I didn't even know that President Biden had a sister. Okay, but he apparently has a sister who is now making the TV rounds and doing two things. One, trying to build the narrative that Hunter Biden is harmless. The family loves him. The family cares for him. He's not a bother. He's not an issue. Excuse me. The other is that all these allegations and accusations and things that he's being now officially accused of and soon to be charged with are all distractions that President Trump had created. And that these are all things that Trump has put out there as a way to continue to bring the Biden family down, which, again, as this continues to roll out and more information is known about what was on that laptop, I mean, even without getting into the salacious stuff, right? The drugs and the prostitutes and all that kind of stuff. I mean, we're talking about some serious issues here, and I know Anibal's itching to get into it. I mean, we're talking about a lot of money being paid to Hunter Biden, which for no other reason can be seen other than for access to the then vice president, now president of the United States.
And now we get a lot. And so there are more and more leaks coming out from the laptop that was issued back there, and how the emails back and forth with him and the family and him and his kids distinctly talk about how that it said that I'm giving 50% to Pop of some kind. And so, oh my God, it happens every time. And so they're talking about how in text messages that the arrangement is that he gives 50% of what he earns to grandpa, which means if that's the case, then someone needs to be asking the question, is that true? Or are you just being hyperbolic, or are you just talking to talk? Like what are those allegations? Because we're not talking about someone that's making a few $1,000s here and there. We're talking about someone that's making hundreds of thousands, even millions of dollars.
Yep.
I mean, there are reports of him getting purposely staying in a hotel that the vice president was in, and then staying there for an extra 3 to 4 weeks just because he wanted to use the hotel room. We have reports talking about how he accidentally gave $25,000 to a prostitute in Los Angeles, and these are just through email. Like, how on earth do you actually I don't know. When I started in the corporate world, I would have never been this open about emails ever. And the fact that I was having disclaimers, and you do what you have to do to protect yourself in the company. But when did we stop talking about like email etiquette when it comes to just not putting your business out there?
Well, we're also talking about, a drug addict. And I don't know to what extent. I don't know if he's still addicted. I don't know if he's got a handle on that whole situation. But obviously the guy was in a very dark place, especially to the extent that he was documenting a lot of this stuff himself and putting it on this laptop and disseminating it to God knows who.
And just leaves it at a repair shop.
Yeah, but again, Vox, which is as liberal as they come, is saying how much legal jeopardy is Hunter Biden in? Like you said, there was the 6 figures that were apparently paid to him, and they're saying the investigation focuses on Hunter Biden's well-compensated work for foreign interests over the past decade or so, particularly for businesses or tycoons in the Ukraine, China, and Kazakhstan, which again, remember Biden completely losing it on the campaign trail on that one guy who asked about his son's involvement in the Ukraine with businesses there. And the main legal questions to appear whether Hunter violated tax laws, I'm sure that's the least of it, committed money laundering, or acted as an unregistered foreign lobbyist. It's a pretty damning article.
The foreign lobbyist is he's probably committed that.
How could you not?
I want to say
dad.
I want to say this. If they were able to bring any kind of investigation or litigation towards the Trump kids, there's no way there's not enough evidence somewhere around here.
Hold on right there, because I also wanted to scroll back up a little bit. Keep going. All right, because this is also fascinating to me just a little bit more because there we go. So New York Times, Wall Street Journal, ABC, CBS, CNN, the Associated Press, pretty much what we consider the mainstream media, have all published stories in recent weeks with a similar theme: the investigation run by the U.S. Attorney's Office in Delaware, which has gotten increasingly active with witnesses testifying to a grand jury. I mean, they haven't announced the charges yet, but I'm sure there's going to be a litany of charges.
So as a lawyer, where in the process do you think they are right now?
Well, if the witnesses, these are all stories. Obviously, the grand jury proceedings are sealed, but if people are going to the grand jury and, if folks are consistently reporting that, then there may be some truth to that. Notwithstanding my usual skepticism of the mainstream media, but if people are testifying before a grand jury, not many federal prosecutors in a case like this would go to a grand jury unless they had the goods,
right?
And unless
some of this stuff's well documented. That, for example, there was someone in Kazakhstan who actually bought him a Fisker. Which was, a pre-Tesla electronic, supercar, electric supercar. And then he apparently traded in that Tesla for a Porsche with other foreign money, that was then wired, directly to the car dealership, to complete the transaction. So, there's all kinds of money moving around.
The idea of the forensic work that's happening right now.
If the U.S. Attorney's Office, the rule of thumb in federal criminal defense is if the federal prosecutor wants an indictment, they're going to get it. The grand juries are by and large very compliant, and so if that's really what's happening, then I would say, an indictment is probably going to come forth if that's what the prosecutor wants.
Do you think that's going to be the October surprise for this coming election cycle?
I don't think you need an indictment to take a thumping in November. But
No, they don't.
No,
really,
but it would make it even better. I mean, might as well just get it all out of the way now.
But the question does become that if they are able to, again, these are incredibly powerful people we're dealing with. I mean, if you want to see how powerful, again, only look to the Epstein situation and how well that was hidden and covered up. If Florida, they are able to connect the dots to the president, at that point, do you feel that either Republicans try to get him out of office, or do they just pressure him to resign, or does he just stick it out and pay the price in 2 years?
Do you think the country can survive a Kamala Harris presidency?
No, but
that's the picture that people need to understand.
Okay, so then what, an impeachment?
Don't even impeach.
A Clinton-like or a Trump-like impeachment where he just sits in office for 2 years doing nothing?
He's already sitting in office doing nothing.
Well, Trump and Clinton actually did a couple of things in their last year or two, but
Trump did a lot.
Did Clinton.
Yeah, let me say,
yeah, he became a Republican basically.
I mean, let me say this: they did two frivolous impeachments against Trump, right?
Yeah,
and frankly, I'm not sure the whole Clinton thing really. I'm not saying what he did was right.
Come on,
I'm just not sure that was.
There was a dress.
Okay, well, I'm not sure that the Republicans looked good. I'm sure the Democrats looked good.
We didn't look good at all.
Well, but it forced Clinton's hands to come to the middle. And basically, he
played ball
with the Republicans, to get anything passed.
Yeah, Clinton won his second race.
Or he would have been a lame duck.
He won his second race, but they did not take back the House or the Senate.
Okay.
That stayed with the Republicans until.
Okay, I'm not sure. There were people. I mean, remember Newt Gingrich lost his seat, and then there was another guy who came in, a new speaker, and then he had to step down. I mean, that was not. That was not.
It was crazy.
That was not a great situation for the Republicans either, quite frankly. But they brought two frivolous, both substantively and procedurally, impeachments against Trump. The second one, he was already out of office. Mm-hmm. The obviously the first one didn't go anywhere, and arguably Biden was more guilty of what the accusation was than Trump was. So, the idea that, that Biden should be, let's find out what the facts are. The grand jury's going to issue an indictment, and then the government's going to unseal the charges, and then we're going to have a lot more information about the specific facts.
Does the federal government then try to connect the dots to the president, or do they just drop it? And
I don't think they drop it, but again, you are now within the 2-year window of Biden having to run in 2024, and now you having that indictment or that kind of storm around the White House, they're not going to want him to run again because it's already so bad that there is already a whiff of some kind of inappropriateness.
But
and that's why I think the Republicans are going to go out for blood. They're going to want to impeach him. But again, that's a stupid thing to do when you have the House and the Senate, and you should be passing laws and you should be doing the people's work instead of just sticking us with 6 months of impeachment talk before an election cycle.
Well, McCarthy is already saying that. He's trying to basically tell Republicans, hey, let's not even
we're not going
start talking about impeachment. But I think the impeachment that's currently discussed is simply because of his mental health. I mean, the man is truly, I mean, it seems on a daily basis, he is quite degrading. I mean, right in front of us.
But unfortunately, I mean, we knew about the Hunter Biden thing, at least to some extent, before the election, and we knew he wasn't in great shape either before the election. Somehow, whether right, wrong, or indifferent, by hook or by crook or by legitimate election, I don't know. I wasn't in those states that where there were the questions or the issues. I mean, obviously, we know what we did here in Florida, but this man is sitting in that office. At the end of the day, I know that. How we got there, whether by a free election or otherwise,
we're 2 years.
Kind of baffles me.
We're
but
2 years out from that. There's no point of relitigating.
No,
the
it's
past.
not relitigating that. But what I'm saying is that he became president despite those things, right? He became president. He stood there. He was sworn in on January 20th. But we got to make better decisions as a country. I mean, we really do, you know?
Well, it shows you also, how poorly I think, and how well hidden it has been for the Democrats to hide how poorly they've been doing nationally, because they do really have very little in terms of a bench, that represents the future of the party. I mean, the best they could produce, was, Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, who again was a mayor.
But that's because they are playing the woke politics situation. They, in their minds, they think they have to have a black vice president. They have to have a black female Supreme Court justice. And the thing is this, as someone of a minority, and Jonny, we've talked about this before, the worst thing you can tell to someone is that you got this job because of your skin color.
Yeah.
Not because of what you did, not because of what you've done. It's because of the skin color. And that is, it's a slap in the face for every minority.
But they've been digging that hole,
Hence
ever since affirmative action.
Hence why they're losing the vote when it comes to in waves with the Hispanics and only now with the black vote.
Yeah. So, is there a website for you that people can visit to kind of keep up with your reelection and to kind of keep up with? I'm guessing you're also going to be putting out some information once the maps are final and everything.
Well,
we would love to hear a decision now, but we will wait.
We'll certainly be running some sort of campaign come the summer. I could tell you that.
Yeah.
You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn. I'm pretty searchable. There, Elect Mike Beltran's the campaign website.
Yeah,
you can follow. Sign up for my legislative newsletter.
So electmikebeltran.com.
Yeah, electmikebeltran.com. You want my legislative newsletter, just contact the legislative office, and then all the bills and everything, and the committee video, the floor video, it's all on the official House side. So there's a number of ways to follow what's going on.
Yeah. Well, man, thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
This is a great show. And we usually like to close it out with one last thing. But Anibal doesn't have anything to share with us tonight.
What are you talking about? We have things that we can talk about. What are you looking forward to in the next session? If the people reelect you?
Well, next session's next week. We got the special for the map. So
oh my god! Okay, if you get reelected,
after that we got the whatever this insurance thing is that folks are talking about. But
are we doing like something with guns or Second Amendment? Is that going to get a special session?
There's been some talk about that. I mean, we're definitely doing the maps. We might do the insurance. There's been talk.
I
about
really
the
don't
guns.
I don't want there to be a special session when it comes to the guns. Just because I want them not to get.
You're talking about the open carry bill?
Yes, I want them not to get what they want because they're so annoying when it comes to that. And if you can't get it through the proper channels, besides insurance and the federal lines, but
if it'll get Anthony Sabatini to shut up, I'm happily willing to jump on board with.
Well, I guess.
No, I'm just kidding.
Let's just speak in general terms. In general terms, if you're going to do a special session, then the question is why did something not get done during the regular session?
Yeah.
And what has changed since then in terms of political will or otherwise that we're going to get it done? And if
well,
you
I
don't
would
have
definitely,
a good answer to that,
on that particular issue, I would love to kind of have you back and talk about like why in the state of Florida, does that seem to be such a, kind of a contentious issue.
The concealed carry?
Yeah, I don't want to get into it now because obviously I'm sure there's a lot to discuss there. But for you personally, what do you see? What is kind of on the top of your goals list for the real next legislative session?
Well, look, we'll have to see, see what the pressing issues are at that point. One thing I'm very concerned about, and I've said something about it this year, I said something about it last year, is obviously we've been having a good economic run. Our budget was way over $100 billion.
And then we put about $9 billion in the bank for
we put about $9 billion
day?
in the bank, yes. Yeah. But at some point,
I love it.
At some point, we should have reserve. I mean, we've reserved and then we've reserved, and then our revenues are continuing to increase. I don't want it to be where having a good run in Florida, having good tax revenues because people are A, coming in to visit, and B, coming in to move here, and property values are going up, and frankly, everything's going up. I don't want that to become by default that we grow government.
Sure.
So we reserved, and rightly so, and that's perhaps a partial excuse for the budget going over $100 billion last year and then this year. The other part of the problem is Part of it's inflation. Part of it's that the federal money's coming in and they structure it in a way that we have to spend it in a certain way. But once the federal money stops, and I think it has, and then once we've reserved, and I think we have, then at some point we have to look and say, we're not just going to grow revenues, even if it's organic revenue growth. We have to look at cutting certain taxes in a way that helps, the working and middle class.
Sure.
And continues to help businesses and the economy grow and people to have a good lifestyle, because I don't want the government, just because we have a good economy doesn't mean the government has to grow.
You also got to plan for the growth in, electric cars, and the reduction in
the fuel
the gas tax and the fuel taxes that are coming in.
That may solve some of the problem, although the fuel tax, when we were looking 2 sessions ago, we were looking to cut a tax. And the fuel tax was already going down, so we went ahead and cut another tax. And I'm all for, if we collect fewer taxes because people stop buying fossil fuels, particularly fossil fuels we get from foreign countries that don't like us very much. We've been saying that now for about 15 years, and still we haven't completely solved the problem. But if we can do that, and that's because consumers are adopting electric cars by operation of the market and their consumer preferences, then that's fine. Then our revenues go down by X million dollars a year, and frankly, the rest of our revenues are growing. And if we don't tax the people for that anymore, then we don't need to tax them. The idea you're going to put some tracker on my car and say how many miles did I drive in an electric car, if that's how I choose to drive, and now you're going to have the surveillance state in my car in order to recoup some fuel tax that's frankly not that important.
I'm going to have to report my mileage every year.
To our fiscal balance sheet. We don't really need to collect that money anyway.
Perfectly okay with, because you're already doing it with your cell phone. So
not the government. The government doesn't get that.
But the government. The amount of people that are listening into these conversations right now, just with our 3 cell phones on the table, probably with 3 different carriers.
Yeah.
It's on YouTube and podcast. And
speaking of unnecessary growth of government, this new election integrity office, which, I mean, again, like, we didn't have any problems here in Florida, and I think it was a lot of the grassroots just making noise.
Are you really starting on that?
I don't know. No, let's not. All right. Thank you again to Mike Beltran, State Representative, District 57.
We can talk about it if you want.
We'll just have to bring you back for another show.
Talk about my stuff either.
We got very good reasons.
Now we can talk about
Over on the far left is Anibal David Cabrera. Thank you to him, as always, for co-hosting, although he got plenty of taxes done today.
It's the financial reporting. It's the 10th. It's the 11th, actually.
We appreciate you for watching whenever, wherever you may be doing so. Again, for the audio version of our podcast, make sure you subscribe, like, follow to any of the podcast platforms at the Tech Overlords at Google, Apple, Spotify, Audible, Amazon, iHeartRadio, Odyssey, and Samsung podcast platforms. And again, to see our beautiful faces, you can follow us on Facebook and YouTube for all of our previous episodes. From Brandon, Florida, this has been The Yard Sign. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Bye-bye.
Brandon's not a real city.